My goal as a broadcaster, and more importantly as a fan of the sport, is to grow our game. I suggested on the call that both sides, players and owners, work together to make baseball as big as the NFL and the NBA. I've been in contact with Tony Clark, the executive director of the of MLBPA, to make sure we're aligned in taking our sport to the next level and showcasing the world's best athletes. Now, Tony Clark, that was today, he put that out there. Tony Clark said, let's see, where's Tony's? Okay. Here's Tony, put out a statement to ESPN. Alex benefited as much as anybody from the battles this union fought against owners' repeated attempts to get a salary cap. Now that he's attempting to become an owner himself, his perspective appears to be different. And that perspective does not reflect the best interests of the players. I mean, that's some chin music right there. Here's the problem. You know, even if, listen, even if he didn't mention the word salary cap, literally, I believe he was strongly inferring that, and, you know, his Instagram post is trying to disarm people, whatever. Here's the problem, though. He always puts his foot in his mouth, because I do believe he loves the game, and I do believe
he does.
As much as anybody. Like, I think he's, like, kind of there with Pete Rose. Like, if you said, hey, Brandon, what two former players love baseball more than anybody? And I couldn't prove this, but I would definitely say Pete Rose is one. I got to be honest with you. I'd probably say Alex Rodriguez is number two. Like, he knows the game. He loves the game. He wants it to grow. I know Alex has $1 gazillion, but I really believe that, you know, he's not too far removed. You put him on a dusty diamond with no grass and no ambiance, and he'd sit there in the rickety wooden bleachers, and he'd watch kids play ball, and he would look at how they rip through the zone, how they're holding the seams, how, you know, he would watch the game through a prism of intellect and passion that few have. I love the way he loves the game.
That's right.
But here we are. We know he's trying to buy the Mets.
Yep.
And here he is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, come on. Come on.
But here's the problem. And this is why he had to put out a statement, BT, is because what if he doesn't succeed in buying the Mets? Now, all of a sudden, he's back in the Fox booth, and he's got to interact with players, and they're going to look
at him. Villain.
Exactly. They're going to look at him like a turncoat. Right?
This is his tortured history.
That is so true.
He does this all the time, and I really do like him, but he always does this to himself.
I think he's great. He just shouldn't have commented on it. He should have just left it at, we need to grow the sport to be $15 billion, and so we can compete again monetarily. I don't know if popularity-wise they'll ever catch back up to the NBA or NFL, but at least monetarily, let's grow this thing to $15 billion, and then we all win.
That's all he had to say.
That's all he had to say.
Now, if they say, well, how would you do that, Alex? Okay, then maybe you kind of get backed into the corner of going down this road of inferring a salary cap would be necessary without using the word salary cap. But you don't just give it up within the answer. I mean, maybe I don't even know who was doing the interview, and I'm certainly not questioning their talents. But maybe they weren't on top of their game. Maybe they don't follow up with, well, how?
Yeah.
Maybe just kind of blends into, and it's a very innocuous take.
Yeah, no, you know? That's what it should have been. It should have been an innocuous take. Instead, we get Alex the owner now, even though he doesn't own a team yet, and guys don't trust him because he's flipping. He made $450 million, but as soon as he becomes an owner, he's one of them now. You know, which is one of the reasons why you kind of want former players in that role, like Derek Jeter, because they have empathy for the players. They can understand it, and it should make it a little bit easier, you know, conversations, contractual or otherwise, with players if they're in an ownership type of role. But it just kind of puts them in a bad light right now.
It does. And he'll get over it. I'm sure he'll move past it. But I am curious if the premise of a salary cap is something that, not even debating the merits of whether or not it will be implemented, because it either will or it won't be. But in terms of, you know, more uniform competitiveness or a different set of economic rules, is that something you want to see?
I mean, well, let me ask you. Let me. You know, I love answering a question with a question, but BT, you know, a salary cap in Major League Baseball maybe brings competitive balance, right? Because it's an argument that's always thrown out there. You got the big market teams, the Yankees, the Dodgers, you know, whoever else. I'm trying to get this.
The Red Sox,
the Cubs, etc. And these big markets, they can afford, because of their local TV revenue and just the market itself, to pay more. And without a cap and without an understanding of what the finances of individual franchises look like we have no idea. We don't know how much money the Yankees make or the Dodgers, etc. We know how much they pay their players, but we don't know,
and we know what their valuations are.
Exactly, but we don't know how much money they're making every single season. So if there was a cap, does it actually level the playing field, especially if there's no penalty for going over it? I think the only way to answer your question without a question, the only way to create a level playing field with a salary cap would be if there was a significant penalty for going over it. Like if there's just a cap just to have it, and teams are going to go over it and pay the penalty, whatever it may be, like it is in the NBA, it's still going to be competitively imbalanced. So unless it's solid like the NFL's is, I don't know if it really helps in that regard.
But just look at the standings from last year. This will answer your question. Look at all the playoff teams. Yankees, huge payroll.
Yep.
Tampa Rays, very low.
Yep.
The Rays were one of the wild cards.
Yep.
The Minnesota Twins, usually somewhere in the middle. They've spent some more money, but they won the Central. All right, the Astros, a lot of young players, and they let Garrett Cole pay. They didn't give him the $300+ million the Yankees did. The Astros are higher than lower, but not Yankee or Dodger territory. The A's won the wild card. A's spend no money. So it's a mixed bag right there.
That's right.
In terms of the NL East, I mean, the Braves have a solid payroll. So did the Nationals. Cardinals was pretty solid. Brewers was good, but not overly exorbitant.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers won the West. And the Diamondbacks won 85 games and weren't too far away from that second wild card, and they historically have a middle-of-the-road payroll. The answer probably is no.
Yeah, so the question is, what's broken, right? What's the problem?
No, nothing.
Exactly.
Arod's just trying to get set for when he owns the Mets.
I know.
That's why it's so obvious.
There is no competitive balance issue, because if you're really smart about it, you can create a winner.
Yeah. And by the way, Tiki, that's not just a one-year snapshot. Anybody could go back a year and have things fall favorably. The A's have been incredible since I lived out there. They were
we always talk about them. They're always right there on the edge. Always.
Yep. The Indians have been very good with their core for the last 5-6 years.
Yep.
I mentioned the Twins are coming. The Rays have been incredibly competitive, multiple playoff teams. Granted, a lot of one-game wild-card playoffs, but they were in the 2008 World Series with Longoria and those studs. So, I don't think you need a salary cap in baseball. I
don't think you do either. And in the way that I think in some ways, if there was a salary cap, there would be so many give-backs on arbitration when guys can actually get paid, and the numbers would be smaller, but guys would get paid sooner. You wouldn't have like Aaron Judge playing on a $500,000 deal like he is now. So these guys would get paid sooner and wouldn't have to wait, 6 years before they hit free agency. But at the end I don't think it would change much. I think it's something that sounds nice from an owner's standpoint, because you have a fixed cost.
Correct.
Like you can now budget. Whereas before, as it is now, it's like, man, are we going to break the bank to pay this dude, right? The Phillies, are we going to really write this check and get Bryce Harper? It changes it if there's a salary cap, because you know that there's only so much you can do, especially if it's a cap like basketballs, which is different than the NFL's, but there's a max. There's only so much you can give. And so, it sounds good from an owner standpoint. I don't think it's necessary, and I don't think the players would ever go for it, because they are waiting, especially the stars, for that moment where they get generational money.
Yeah, and by the way, let's go back to A-Rod's original statement and just take away the money and just get to the core premise, the desire to elevate the profile of baseball, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? The way you do that are the ways that you and I have discussed, as many have for years. You make it faster.
Yep.
That's why there's always these modifications pertaining to pace of play. And the other way you do it, and I'm a big proponent of...
I like your latest one, by the way, BT. No whipping around the diamond.
I know, but I missed that. I used to love doing that. Show off the hose. And the other way to do this, too, and I've co-signed this, even though I love having baseball on the tube every night, I've been a proponent for fewer games, because when you create an element of demand, in theory, people will be more compelled and driven to flip on the game. So you make it a little quicker by 20 seconds here, 13 seconds here, 18 more action. And instead of being on basically 7 days a week, you're on 5.5 days a week, and you play a 140-game schedule. To me, that would do a lot more, significantly more, to heighten the profile of baseball and make it more appealing to the next generation, which ultimately will carry the cross for the sport, than anything to do with the economics of what each team has to pay their players.
I think you're right.
I really don't see it. There's no correlation to a salary cap and elevated interest for the game.
No.
Because teams that don't spend money still win.
Yeah, so it comes down to Alex Rodriguez talking about revenue sharing, de facto salary cap. It's all because he's looking at it from an owner standpoint.
Correct.
not from a popularity standpoint.
Nobody said he was a dummy.
No, not at all.
Nobody said he was a dummy.
He's actually really smart.